that the enactment of this legislation imposed by the authorities in Beijing on the people of Hong Kong constitutes a clear and serious breach of the Joint Declaration. Let me explain to the House the grounds for this sobering conclusion. First, Mr. Speaker, the legislation violates the high degree of autonomy, executive and legislative powers, and independent judicial authority provided for in paragraph 3 of the Joint Declaration. The imposition of this legislation by the government in Beijing, rather than it being left to Hong Kong's own institutions, is also, it should be noted, in direct conflict with Article 23 of China's own Basic Law for Hong Kong, which affirms that Hong Kong should bring forward its own national security legislation. In fact, the Basic Law elaborates on this and only allows Beijing to directly impose laws in a very limited number of cases, such as for the purposes of defence, foreign affairs, or in exceptional circumstances in which the National People's Congress declares a state of war or a state of emergency. None of those exceptions apply here, nor has the National People's Congress sought to justify this law on any such ground. Second, Mr. Speaker, the national security legislation contains a slew of measures that directly threaten the freedoms and rights protected by the Joint Declaration. In this respect, the House will be particularly concerned by the potentially wide-ranging ability of the mainland authorities to take jurisdiction over certain cases without any independent oversight and to try those cases in Chinese courts. This measure violates paragraph 3, subparagraph 3 and 5 of the Joint Declaration and directly threatens the rights contained in the UN International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, which under the Joint Declaration are to be protected in Hong Kong. And I think in particular it's worth saying that those measures represent a flagrant assault on freedom of speech and freedom of peaceful protest for the people of Hong Kong. Third, Mr. Speaker, the legislation provides that Hong Kong's chief executive, rather than the Chief Justice, will appoint judges to hear national security cases, a move that clearly risks undermining the independence of Hong Kong's judiciary, again which is protected by paragraph 3, subparagraph 3 of the Joint Declaration. Fourth, Mr. Speaker, the legislation provides for the establishment by the Chinese government of a new Office for Safeguarding National Security in Hong Kong, run by and reporting to the mainland authorities. That is particularly worrying, Mr. Speaker, because that office is given wide-ranging powers, directly intruding on the responsibility of the Hong Kong authorities to maintain public order, again directly in breach of the Joint Declaration, this time paragraph 3, subparagraph 11. Mr. Speaker, the authorities in Hong Kong have already started to enforce this legislation, with reports of arrests by the police and official notices warning the people of Hong Kong against waving flags or chanting.